Reborn. I deliberately showed up late, dragging my feet on the way to register my marriage with Anthony. In my previous life, right after he learned I was pregnant, Anthony Koo disappeared with another woman, Selena, for 20 years. He only came back when I was on my deathbed. Staring at a framed photo of Selena, he asked me, if I'd just waited a little longer to marry you back then, do you think things would have been different? In this life, Anthony was standing at my dormitory entrance, waiting to take me to the marriage registry. But I lied, telling him I had to drop something off for a colleague, and sent him on ahead to the registry office without me. The moment he was out of sight, I headed for the mountains. Now, I was lounging on Aunt Wang's rocking chair, gazing out at the sea of clouds below her little house and soaking up the sun. Aunt Wang handed me a roasted sweet potato. "Aren't you supposed to be marrying that nice engineer Koo today?" she asked. "What are you doing all the way up here?" I took a bite of the warm, soft sweet potato and managed a small smile. "Auntie, I had a terrible nightmare. Even now that I'm awake, I can't shake the feeling." Aunt Wang patted my hand comfortingly. "Oh, honey, it was just a dream. You can't let it bother you. What matters is your real life, and you've got a good one ahead of you with Engineer Koo. What's a silly nightmare compared to that?" I froze for a second, then forced another smile and nodded. "You're right, Auntie. I'll just stay for a little while longer, then I'll head down." "Marry Anthony?" "Not in this lifetime. No chance in hell." Chapter 2. In my past life, the moment Anthony and I stepped out of the registry office as husband and wife, he bumped into a young woman, Selena. She lived in the village where we were assigned to work. On the way back, Anthony was silent the entire time. I just figured he was trying to be respectful of our new boundaries as a married couple. I never would have guessed the truth, not until I was on my deathbed. That accidental encounter? It was love at first sight for him. He wasn't keeping his distance out of respect for me. He was regretting this marriage. Regretting that he hadn't put off our marriage by just one day. From that day on, Anthony treated me cold. He started spending hours just sitting alone, staring off in the direction of her village. Whenever I asked him what was wrong, he'd avoid the question. After getting nothing out of him a few times, I got busy with work and eventually gave up asking. I assumed that something was bothering him, and he'd tell me when he was ready. When the project in the village ended, Anthony and I were assigned to different teams and forced to live apart. I thought it was temporary. But with every new project, we were sent to opposite ends of the country. I tried to talk to him about it once, but he just shrugged it off. "We have to follow the company's orders," was all he said. It wasn't until I returned to the capital for a report one day that I overheard my colleagues talking. It turned out that every single one of those long-distance assignments, after the very first one, had been personally requested by Anthony. We had a massive fight. He held me and apologized afterward, but he still wouldn't tell me why he'd done it. The next morning, Anthony left. I knew in that moment our marriage was over. But then, a twist. I found out I was pregnant. When Anthony learned about the pregnancy, his cold demeanor vanished. He started taking care of me, showering me with attention. He clumsily taught himself to cook for me. He'd press his ear to my stomach, listening intently as if he could actually hear the baby blowing bubbles inside. Every night, he'd walk with me for hours. Then one day, he was just gone. Later, I asked everyone. I searched for what felt like an eternity. But no one knew where he went. No one could tell me if he was dead or alive. I went to every checkup alone. I gave birth alone. I took our sick child to the hospital alone, and I raised him alone. Even our parents passed away, I buried them alone. I truly thought he was dead. But then, in my final moments, as the world was fading to black, he suddenly reappeared in front of me. Only then did I learn the truth. For 20 years, he had been with Selena. They had adopted a son of their own and showered him with affection. But Selena, burdened by her own sorrows, had passed away before him. Her greatest regret, he told me, was never getting the chance to legally be his wife. Anthony said he was sorry, but he also said he resented me. The absurdity of it was staggering. If he never loved me, why didn't he just divorce me? He could have given Selena the life she wanted. Instead, he abandoned his wife and son, and he neglected his own aging parents. What right did he have to resent me? And my own son, the one I had raised all by myself, told me he envied their adopted boy, who'd gotten to grow up surrounded by affection. He told me he resented me for even bringing him into a world without his permission. And that's when I finally understood. He had been in contact with his father for years, and he'd hidden it from me the entire time. Chapter 3. After another hour at Aunt Wong's, I said my goodbyes and headed straight for the marriage registry. Just as I arrived, I saw Anthony helping Selena to her feet. He was staring at her, completely captivated, the look of irritation on his face now replaced by one of pure admiration. In my past life, I'd been so focused on helping Selena myself that I never even noticed the look on Anthony's face. But this time, watching from the sidelines, it was so obvious. "Anthony, I'm here. Have you been waiting long?" My voice made him jump. He instantly tensed up, his movements becoming clumsy and flustered. "Oh, Maria. You're here." I caught the look Selena gave me. It was completely different from last life, not just simple curiosity, but something more complex, maybe even resentment. But when I looked again, it was gone, and her expression was neutral again, as if it never happened. I was curious. In this life, we hadn't signed the papers yet. Now that he'd met Selena even earlier, what would he do? Would he break up with me for her? Or would he go down the same path as before, marry me, and then abandon me for her later? "It's getting late," I said, putting on an eager smile. "Shouldn't we go in and get this done?" Anthony's face went white. Just then, as if on cue, Selena cried out, "Ouch!" My foot, shattering the silence. In my last life, she hadn't been hurt at all. So why now? And the timing, it was perfect. Could it be? Was she reborn, too? I studied her, searching for a sign, but found nothing. Anthony rushed Selena to the clinic. The doctor took one look at her foot and concluded that aside from a small scrape that was already healing, there was nothing wrong. Selena's face flushed with embarrassment. But Anthony, he actually seemed relieved. On the way back, as we passed the registry office, Anthony hesitated. "Maria, look at the time. They're probably closed now. How about we come back tomorrow?" he suggested. I replied coolly, "We'll see. You're supposed to pick an auspicious day for these things anyway. But in this life, there would never be an auspicious day for us to get married." A faint smile escaped from my face. Anthony sighed. "All right. I'll let Aunt Wong know when we get back." We had come on our bicycles. For the ride home, Selena hopped onto the back of Anthony's bike without a moment's hesitation. He shot me an embarrassed look but didn't tell her to get off. I pretended not to notice and pedaled on ahead. The evening breeze carried their voices back to me. I couldn't make out the words, but I could hear the light, happy tone. And I could definitely hear Anthony's soft, suppressed laughter. How long had it been since I'd heard him laugh like that? In my past life, after he met Selena, he never smiled at me again. But in this life, it didn't matter. None of it mattered anymore. As we rode into the village, I saw the villagers notice Selena on the back of Anthony's bike, her arm wrapped snugly around his waist. I caught their looks in my direction, a few knowing winks, a few pitying coughs and shakes of the head. I knew exactly what they were all thinking. I just smiled, pedaled past them, and went back to my dorm. Chapter 4. Anthony had already rented a house for us, in preparation for our wedding. Most of our things were already moved in. I found myself stopping as I passed by it, just staring at the place that was supposed to be our home. It was a simple layout, 2 bedrooms off a central living room, with a small courtyard out back. In my previous life, after we'd gotten married, I was so happy when I saw the wedding decorations plastered all over this house. No one knew that just the day before, the groom had been happily decorating our new home, only for our marriage to remain unconsummated on our wedding night. That night, like so many that followed, we just lay there in bed in total silence. We did nothing. And yet, neither of us slept. Without waiting for Anthony to come back, I pushed my bicycle toward my dorm. Back inside, I took out the transfer letter. It was a transfer back to the capital, but it was more than that. It was a promotion. A raise. In my past life, I'd thrown this opportunity away for him. But the result was that the company divided us into completely different places. Since then, we have been apart more and more. 3 months later, I got pregnant. And Anthony disappeared. I had to raise our son alone, while also taking care of his parents and mine. My work suffered, and I was slowly pushed from a key department into a forgotten corner of the company. I never got another chance for a promotion. I remembered when my son was in elementary school, he used to look at me with such disappointment in his eyes. "Other moms are so pretty," he'd say. "Why can't you dress up like Seal, like the other women?" Seal? Selena? The more the memory solidified, the colder my blood ran. Even back then, my son had already been in contact with his missing father. And he hid it from me for his entire life. How ridiculous. How absolutely laughable. That evening, Anthony didn't come looking for me like he usually did. I went to the cafeteria by myself. Inside, I saw him sitting across from Selena. They were putting food on each other's plates. Anthony said something that made Selena cover her mouth as she laughed. When he saw me, he froze for a second before quickly scrambling to his feet. "Maria, you're here." Selena just got back to town and didn't have any food at her place, so I brought her here to eat. I was going to bring a plate back for you, I just didn't expect you'd be here so early." Early? The cafeteria was almost empty. The food was nearly all gone. I suddenly remembered my previous life. The night we got our marriage certificate, Anthony had gone out to get us dinner. I waited for hours, but when he finally came back, his hands were empty. His only explanation had been a flat, "They ran out of food. Just tough it out for tonight." That night, the only sound in our new home was my stomach growling. So this was why. He had been with Selena even then. I said nothing and walked right past him. I packed up what little food was left and took it back to my dorm. I'd barely taken a few bites when someone knocked on my door. It was Anthony. With Selena. Anthony cleared his throat, a complicated look on his face. "Maria, I wanted to talk to you about something." I just stared at him, waiting. Anthony glanced back at Selena, who was hiding timidly behind him like he was her protector. His eyes softened with tenderness, and when he turned back to me, his voice was firmer. "Maria, Selena just got back from the city. You know she lives alone, and her house, well, it hasn't been lived in for a while. It needs a lot of work." He hesitated, then pushed on. "Since we haven't, officially registered yet, I was thinking, maybe we could let Selena stay at our new place for a couple of days?" I looked at Selena. She shrank back like a scared little rabbit, hiding behind Anthony. In this life and the last, I'd seen two very different sides of her. If she wasn't reborn, I didn't know what to believe. But I had no interest in playing her game. I didn't love this man anymore. Nothing she did could affect me now. "Sure," I said with a casual shrug. "It's your house. You can do what you want." Anthony had clearly not expected me to agree so easily. The rest of his prepared speech died in his throat. "But," I added, "I don't like other people touching my stuff. I'll swing by later to get my things." He was stunned for a second, then waved his hands frantically. No need for that. I'll just move your things to the other room." So that was his plan. It wasn't just about letting her stay in the house. He wanted her to sleep in our bed. How pathetic. And then I saw the tiny, triumphant smirk on Selena's lips. Chapter 5. After dinner, I grabbed a flashlight and headed over to the house to pack my things. When I got there, Anthony was in the middle of making the bed for Selena with the brand new sheets I had picked out for our wedding night. He looked startled to see me. "Maria, what are you doing here? I already moved your things into the other room." "Oh." I replied casually and turned to go get my belongings. Anthony followed me, a complicated look on his face, his eyes swirling with some emotion I couldn't quite read. "Maria." Before he could say more, Selena ran out of the room. "Anthony, isn't that the bed sheet for your wedding with Maria? Is it really okay for me to use it?" "I don't mind, really. I could just sleep on a pile of laundry." Her voice trailed off, getting softer and softer. I watched the look in Anthony's eyes as he gazed at her. It was filled with a soft, protective pity. Then he turned to me. "Maria," he said, turning to me, "you see, all the sheets in the house are new. This one is just..." I didn't miss the flicker of triumph in Selena's eyes. But she had no idea. This pathetic excuse for a man had meant nothing to me from the moment I was reborn. I shrugged indifferently. "You bought it. It's your call." "Thank you, Maria. And thank you, Anthony. You're both so good to me." Wow. I never dreamed I'd get to live in Anthony's house and sleep in his bed. Her words were phrased, just so. Anthony noticed it too, hesitating and glancing at me, as if testing my reaction. Realizing what she'd said, she quickly covered her mouth, her eyes wide with fake apology. "Oh my gosh, I didn't mean it like that. Maria, I'm so sorry, please don't misunderstand. There's nothing going on between me and Anthony, I swear. I should just go sleep on the floor." She actually turned as if to grab a pile of dirty laundry. Anthony quickly stopped her. I patted her shoulder, my voice dripping with false reassurance. "It's fine, really. Make yourself comfortable. It's no big deal to me." Anthony studied my face, searching for any sign of anger or jealousy, but I gave him nothing. I didn't have time to waste on them. Selena, meanwhile, kept up her little act, pretending to be flustered, making everything a bigger deal than it was, all to bait me into a reaction so she could play the weak, innocent victim for Anthony. Trying to make him despise me. But in this life, I couldn't care less. What she should really be grateful for is that in our past life, she at least kept her distance. This time, she was overplaying her hand. I leaned in close, whispering so only she could hear. "You're trying way too hard, Selena. Why would I care? Anthony is just looking out for you. It makes sense, right? I mean, even if he wanted to marry you, I wouldn't object, but the real question is, do you actually think he will?" I smiled and gave her a little wink. The look on Selena's face twisted from feigned innocence to pure ugliness. She couldn't understand how I could be so different from the naive girl she'd tricked so easily in our past life. And then, a flicker of realization dawned in her eyes. She smirked. I finished packing my things and slung the bag over my shoulder, ready to go. Anthony suddenly called out my name. He stepped forward, reaching for my bag. I sidestepped him. What a joke. If Selena was reborn too, she wouldn't settle for being the other woman this time around. She wanted to be the official wife. She'd already staked her claim on Anthony, and I had no intention of getting caught in the crossfire. Anthony saw me dodge, and a look of hurt filled his eyes. "Maria, are you angry?" "I can explain." "How rare." In our past life, he wasted 20 years of my life and never explained a single thing. Suddenly, now he wanted to talk? But I already knew exactly what he was going to say. It would be nothing but pathetic excuses, trying to disguise his cheating as just looking out for a friend. An explanation? Pointless. And besides, Selena would never allow it. Ah. Right on cue. Selena let out a sharp little cry, and just like that, Anthony dropped our conversation and rushed back to her side. I scoffed, tightened the strap of my bag on my shoulder, and walked out without a backward glance. Chapter 6. In my past life, I was married to Anthony for 21 years. I died at 45, far too young. Giving birth to that ungrateful son of mine, I nearly bled to death. My health was never the same after that. Before my body even had a chance to heal, I was already taking care of our child alone. Dealing with Anthony's demanding, unreasonable parents alone. Juggling my job while desperately searching for any trace of my missing husband. My body broke down day by day. It took every last bit of my strength just to raise him to the age of 20. After Anthony vanished, I never had another peaceful night of sleep. But in this life, I hadn't married him. I hadn't pushed my body to the brink of collapse. I was healthy. For the first time in 2 lifetimes, I slept soundly through the night. The next morning, I applied for a leave of absence and told my supervisor that I would be accepting the transfer back to the capital. He looked surprised. "But didn't you say you wanted to stay here? So you wouldn't have to be separated from Engineer Ku after you got married?" I shook my head. "I won't be marrying him. My career comes first now." My supervisor smiled, a look of approval in his eyes. In my past life, he had tried to persuade me, too. "With your abilities," he'd once told me, "you have a much brighter future ahead of you." But I'd been so blind back then. I'd thrown away a golden opportunity for a man who wasn't worth a damn. This time, I asked my supervisor to keep my departure quiet. We agreed on my transfer date, and after leaving his office, I headed straight for the train station. Train tickets were hard to come by back then. You had to wait in line for hours just to get one. As I cycled past the house that was supposed to have been ours, I glanced through the fence. Anthony and Selena were crouched in the courtyard, brushing their teeth side by side. Anthony casually reached for a towel on the line and gently wiped Selena's hands. Selena gazed up at him, her eyes shining with adoration. It seemed their relationship had progressed quite a bit overnight. Noticing me, Anthony's face went pale, and he quickly put some distance between himself and Selena. I looked away, completely unmoved by his guilty conscience or her triumphant smirk. At the train station, I paid a small fee to store my bicycle before joining the massive queue in the ticket hall. Back then, people traveling long distances carried everything they owned in huge bundles on their backs, from sewing needles and bedding to massive wicker baskets. They packed their entire lives onto those trains. Looking at the crowded hall, I decided to travel light. Anything bulky, I would sell or give away. After waiting in line for what felt like an eternity, I chose a sleeper ticket instead of a standing one. I had suffered enough in my last life. This time, I was going to treat myself better. By the time I left the station, it was already afternoon. I'd been so focused on getting the ticket that I'd forgotten to eat and missed lunch. Now I was starving. Following a distant memory, I found a state-owned restaurant. This was where Anthony and I had our first arranged date. He was handsome, with fair skin and a clean-cut look that I found appealing. Like me, he was a technician, and both our families were in the capital. I'd thought it would make our future life convenient. He, in turn, seemed satisfied with my looks and background. So, we decided to give it a try. During our courtship, he was never overly romantic, but he was good to me. He was considerate in our daily lives and would discuss work problems with me. Our relationship was never about fiery passion. It was quiet, comfortable, compatible. I thought we would build a quiet, stable life together. But he blindsided me with a bombshell. Anthony proposed after we'd only been dating for 2 months. I remembered he seemed genuinely happy about it at the time. But in the end, a comfortable, steady relationship built on years of friendship stood no chance against the intoxicating rush of love at first sight. Selena's arrival awakened something in him. His heart, which I thought was mine, wavered. He fell, hard and fast. But of all his mistakes, the worst was this: he selfishly threw everything away to chase that feeling, and in doing so, he destroyed my life. Chapter 7. I parked my bike and stepped inside the state-run restaurant. It wasn't peak hour, so I spotted Anthony and Selena in the corner right away. Selena spotted me first, jumping to her feet and waving enthusiastically. Maria, are you here to eat, too? Anthony and I were just having lunch, why don't you join us? Don't be a stranger, there's plenty of food. I had to hand it to her, this was some next-level frenemy behavior. With just a few words, she'd already staked her claim as the main woman in his life. Oh, I wouldn't want to intrude, I said with a bright smile, glancing at Anthony. Am I interrupting a date? Anthony visibly panicked, quickly standing to pull out a chair for me. Oh Maria, don't misunderstand. Selena chimed in before he could speak. Me and Anthony, it's not what you think. He just says I'm too skinny and wants to fatten me up a little. Oh great, another flex. I ignored Anthony's offered chair and took a seat right next to Selena. Anthony awkwardly scratched his nose and sat back down. Then I looked at their table. Wow. It was loaded with expensive dishes: braised pork, a whole fish, stir-fried vegetables, soup. This one meal probably cost half of Anthony's monthly salary. So generous for her. Selena eagerly scooped a piece of pork into my bowl. Maria, you have to try this. Anthony said the braised pork here is the best, so he insisted on ordering it for me. He even said he'd get an extra order for me to take home, she gushed. Oh, and have some fish. It's amazing. Anthony says he knows how to make this dish himself. He promised he'd cook it for me all the time when we get back. Anthony could cook? That was news to me. In my past life, when I was pregnant, he'd stumbled around the kitchen like a headless chicken, dropping pots and breaking bowls until I had to kick him out and cook for myself. So love really could be faked, huh? I picked up the braised pork and tasted it. It was good. Back in this era, the food was still real. The pork was rich and fragrant, and the river fish was clean and fresh, without the muddy taste of the farm-raised fish from decades later. I took my time, savoring each bite, paying no mind to whatever else Selena was prattling on about. Then Selena let out a sudden, dramatic shriek. It was so abrupt I nearly dropped my chopsticks. Oh, Maria, I'm so sorry. A fishbone just scared me, that's all. Scared by a fishbone? Really? No, where was I? Oh, right. Maria, have you ever tried Anthony's cooking? If not, you should come over tonight. He promised he'd cook for me. Right, Anthony? So that was her game. She'd noticed I wasn't taking the bait, so she'd created a scene just to make sure I was paying attention to her. Go ahead, I thought. Keep showing off. Let's see who you have to flaunt for after I'm gone. I smiled sweetly. Selena, you're so lucky. I've known Anthony for ages, and I never even knew he could cook. But you two have only known each other for, 2 days? And he's already offering to cook for you. I guess that means I'll get to benefit from your good fortune, too. She'd been trying to make me jealous. She clearly hadn't expected me to lean into it. She froze. Anthony's face went through several shades of green and white. I just kept eating, ignoring both of them. When my own dish scallion tofu arrived, I pushed it into the center of the table. Here, help yourselves. The atmosphere at the table became instantly, painfully awkward. And finally it was quiet. And I could enjoy my meal in peace. Chapter 8. After leaving the restaurant, I gave a casual goodbye to Selena and Anthony and hopped on my bike. I was heading to the post office to call my parents. In my past life, after Anthony disappeared, I was stretched so thin, completely exhausted, every single day. I had to raise our child alone. I had to deal with Anthony's demanding, unreasonable parents alone. I had to juggle my job while desperately searching for any trace of my missing husband. Even though my family was just as good as his, Anthony's parents always looked down on me. They didn't lift a finger to help with the child. In fact, they seemed to go out of their way to make my life a living hell. The moment I showed the slightest bit of unhappiness, they would march down to my workplace and cause a huge scene. Back then, a stable job was hard to come by, and I had a child to feed. So, I just took it. My own parents, worried sick about me, helped as much as they could while still taking care of their other grandchildren. They even tried to find me a new husband. But when Anthony's parents found out, they stormed into my parents' home and threw a fit, accusing them of trying to drive them to an early grave. And that wasn't the worst of it. Whenever a man showed the slightest interest in me, Anthony's mother would drag my son along to sabotage it. Then, right in front of whatever man I was meeting, she would pinch my son to make him cry and throw a tantrum. After a few times, no man in town would even agree to meet with me. Eventually, I gave up on remarrying altogether and devoted myself to raising my son. Through all those years, my parents endured so much because of Anthony's family. But more than anything, they just worried about me. Even on their deathbeds, I was the only thing they worried about. The phone call connected quickly. Hearing their voices again after a lifetime apart, the tears just started falling. The choke in my voice sent my parents into a panic. They immediately assumed Anthony had bullied me and were ready to march over and give him a piece of their mind. I quickly cut them off, reassuring them and explaining everything that had happened, including my decision to leave. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then, my mother simply said, "Honey, if this is a decision you've thought through carefully, then we support you." Only then could I finally breathe. I told them about my transfer back to the capital and that my train would leave in 3 days. My mother immediately promised to cook all my favorite foods and wait for me to come home. When I got back to my dorm and opened the door, I found Anthony sitting at my desk, flipping through my study materials. I'd almost forgotten he had a key to my room, too. My eyes flicked to the locked drawer where my transfer papers were hidden, and I breathed a small sigh of relief. My relationship with Anthony was in limbo, and the last thing I needed was more drama before I could get out of here. Seeing me, Anthony quickly stood up and poured me a glass of water. He clearly wanted to say something, but he just stood there, hesitating. I sat on my bed, took a slow sip of my tea, and waited. Finally, he couldn't take the silence anymore. He turned to face me. "Maria," he started, "Selena and it's not what you think." I took another sip of my tea. "And what is it that I think?" Anthony looked stunned. The old Maria would have believed him, explanation or not. But I'd already lived through this once. I'd seen it all, endured it all. I had suffered the miserable fate he'd handed me. He could explain himself 1,000 times, and it wouldn't mean a thing. Because in my past life, on my deathbed, Anthony himself told me the truth. That for him and Selena, it was love at first sight. That she was the true love of his life. And that what we had, was nothing. Chapter 9. I'd always been the third wheel in their love story. The inconvenient flaw. The thorn in the side of their perfect romance. "Maria, believe me or not, I'm just trying to take care of Selena because she's an orphan. Life is hard for a woman on her own." His voice was thick with forced sincerity, but his eyes darted everywhere except my face. If he didn't even believe his own lies, why should I? But I played along anyway. "All right, I believe you," I said. "Now, can you please go? It's been a long day, and I want to rest." "Oh, and leave my key on your way out." Anthony's face stiffened. He knew. He knew I didn't believe him for a second. After he left, I wiped down the chair he had sat in. It felt dirty. Then I started packing. I hadn't been here long, only 6 months, so I didn't have much. Just clothes, bedding, and daily essentials. The real problem was all the stuff we'd bought together for the wedding. I'd have to settle the accounts with him before I left. Just as I was thinking that, there was another knock on the door. It was Anthony again. He was holding a small tin box, handing it to me with a grin. "Here, Maria. Open it." Inside was a thick stack of cash and ration tickets. Anthony smiled. "I've been thinking, once we're married, I'll give my whole salary to you. You can manage the house, and I'll just take a small allowance each month." I stared at him. This Anthony, he felt like a complete stranger. In my past life, he'd never given me his salary. I never saw a single coin from him after we were married. When I nearly died in childbirth, his parents had refused to spend a penny to save me, even saying, "Just let her die. It's a waste of money to keep her alive." It was my own parents and my brother's family who had to scrape together the money, begging the doctors to save my life. Later, when his parents got sick, when they needed medicine, when they died, it was me who paid for it all. During the 20 years Anthony was gone, he'd been in secret contact with our son. And most likely, with his parents, too. Did he ever send them money? I'll never know. But I do know that just before his mother passed away, she called my son into her room. When he came out, he was trying to look sad, but I saw a flash of excitement in his eyes. After the funeral, I searched her room but found nothing of value. Later, when I fell ill and couldn't afford treatment, I just endured it. And endured. Until I couldn't anymore. And thinking about it now. Did Anthony know I was sick back then? Did my son, holding on to whatever money his grandmother gave him, just stand by and watch me suffer? A deep, suffocating ache bloomed in my chest. Anthony noticed me shaking and reached out to steady me. I shoved his hand away. Leaning against the wall, I focused on taking slow, deep breaths until the crushing pain in my heart subsided. When I looked at Anthony again, there was nothing left in my eyes but ice. He visibly tensed. I glanced at the tin box full of money. Since he'd brought it to me, I wasn't about to lose out. The debts from my last life could never be repaid. But in this one, I would settle every last score. I took out half the money, my share of the wedding expenses. Then I handed the box and the rest of the cash back to him. Anthony looked confused, but he didn't ask. Even an idiot could tell that something between us had fundamentally shifted. Something was slipping from his control. He hesitated, glancing at me again and again, before finally turning and leaving. That night, I didn't sleep. I dreamed. I dreamed of Anthony's parents calling to tell him I was dying in childbirth, and hearing his flat, indifferent him over the phone. I dreamed of my son, still a baby in his blankets, being taken in secret to meet Anthony. Anthony had known I was looking for him, but he'd conspired with everyone around me to keep me in the dark. No wonder no one I met in all those years ever dared to mention his name to me. Then I dreamed of my old colleagues, the ones I'd worked with for years. I heard them talking about Anthony and Selena's great love story with admiration. A love so pure, so passionate, they'd said. It was fate. And me? I was just a mistake. An unfortunate accident, they'd say. Just a glitch in the universe, a string of fate that got tangled. How laughably cruel. I woke up to a tear-soaked pillow. But unlike my last life, this time I was still alive. Still healthy. And this time, I had another chance. Chapter 10. The next 2 days were a blur of handing over my work. As promised, I had also agreed to join Selena for dinner at Anthony's place. And since neither of them brought up the incident with the money box, I figured that matter was closed. But then, that evening, Selena came to find me, warmly inviting me over for dinner. Not wanting to be rude, I agreed. When I arrived with a small gift in hand, I walked into the courtyard and saw them. Anthony and Selena, locked in an embrace. His hands were all over her. The moment they saw me, Anthony's face went white as a sheet, paler than I had ever seen it. Selena looked just as shocked, fumbling to button up a blouse that was nearly wide open. I didn't say a word. I just turned and walked away. Selena had invited me for a show, and boy, did I get one. The gift in my hand felt pointless now. I hadn't gotten far before I heard frantic footsteps behind me. Anthony caught up, grabbing my arm. "Maria, please," he begged, "let me explain. Selena and it's not what you think." I turned to face him, my expression unreadable. "Oh? It's not what I think." My gaze drifted downward pointedly. Are you talking about the part where you were half undressed and wrapped around each other? Or the part where your hand was all over her? Anthony opened his mouth, but no words came out. Over the past 2 days, while I was busy at work, Aunt One had been my eyes and ears. She couldn't stand mistresses. Especially a mistress like Selena, who not only knew exactly what she was doing but had the nerve to flaunt it right in the future wife's face. Aunt Wang had been eagerly reporting all of their disgusting little moments. She told me people in the village had seen Selena deliberately brushing up against Anthony. He didn't move away. They saw them sharing food from the same bowl. They saw them holding hands when they thought no one was around. And now, standing here, Anthony just looked pathetic. I couldn't understand it. After doing all that, why was he so desperate to explain himself to me? Did he really think I was the same woman from our past life? The dutiful wife who would take care of his parents while he and Selena played house somewhere else? I took a step closer, looking him dead in the eye. Before Selena showed up, I was the only one you'd let get close to you. 1 hour after meeting her, you were rushing her to the hospital. 3 hours after meeting her, you were letting her ride on the back of your bike with her arms wrapped around your waist. 5 hours after meeting her, you ditched me to take her to dinner. 7 hours after meeting her, you were moving her into our home, letting her sleep in our bed, on the very sheets I picked out for our wedding. 1 day after meeting her, you spent half a month's salary to buy her an expensive meal. And 1 day after meeting her, you promised you would personally cook for her. You don't pull away when she touches you. You share food from the same bowl. You hold her hand when you think no one is looking. And now, this. Holding her. Your hands all over her. So tell me, Anthony. Can you still look me in the eye and swear you two are innocent? Do you really, honestly think I'm stupid enough to believe you? With every word, he trembled more violently. His lips parted, but no sound came out. I wasn't done. I gave him a slow, deliberate smile. Let me guess why you're so desperate to explain yourself. Why you tried to buy me off with that box of money. The day we were supposed to get married, you fell for Selena at first sight. She was interested, too, so she faked an injury to stop the registration. And in that moment, when you felt that spark, you didn't really want to marry me anymore. But over the past few days, you've made up your mind. You want her. You want to be with her day and night. I looked right through him, and with every word, I tore his pathetic excuses to shreds. But at the same time, you still need a good, dutiful wife, don't you? Someone to take care of your aging parents. Someone to handle all the boring, difficult parts of life you don't want to deal with. And it's even better if that wife sticks around to bury them, right? I tilted my head, my voice chillingly soft. Isn't that right, Anthony? The moment I finished, his head snapped up. His eyes were wide with shock and pure, unadulterated disbelief. I had laid his deepest, most selfish thoughts bare for him to see. And for a moment, I felt nothing but a profound sorrow. Sorrow for the lifetime I had wasted on such a small, calculating man. Sorrow for all the tiny moments of happiness I had treasured, only to realize they were all part of the same cruel joke. I could no longer lie to myself. And more importantly, I would never let Anthony lie to him again. Chapter 11. That night, as I was packing the last of my things in my dorm room, Selena showed up. She stood in the doorway, her face a mask of hostility. So, you're back. I glanced at her, unbothered. She scoffed, then looked me up and down with a sneer, her eyes dripping with mockery. In our last life, you may have stolen the title of Anthony's wife, but what good did it do you? You spent your whole life slaving away for his parents. And you worked yourself to the bone raising that ungrateful son, only for him to call me mom behind your back. Ha ha ha. Can you even imagine? How pathetic. Your husband belonged to me. Your son belonged to me. And in this life, even though you were reborn, too, you still can't change the fact that Anthony loves me. This time I will be Anthony's wife. It can only be me. I had long since given up on the son from my past life. But hearing that he had secretly called Selena mom, it still sent a pang of hurt through my chest. Just for a moment. Then, I let it go. It didn't matter. It didn't matter because in this life, I wouldn't be bringing him into the world at all. No matter what he might have thought, no matter if he resented me, I would never give him the chance to betray me again. Selena kept crowing, like a peacock showing off its feathers after a victory. But when she finally registered the look on my face, she faltered. There was no anger in my eyes. Only pity. A detached sympathy. Indifference. Not a single spark of rage. Her triumphant posture just crumbled. And she fled. She didn't get it. To me, she was just another pathetic soul. In our past life, I was the one holding everything together behind the scenes, allowing them to live out their grand romance without a care in the world. But in this life? With me gone, who was going to clean up their messes? Would they still have their happy ending? Later that night, I couldn't sleep. I stepped outside to look at the moon only to be startled by a dark figure slumped against my doorstep. The light from my dorm room flickered across his face. It was Anthony. His entire body reeked of alcohol. I had no idea how long he had been sitting there. Even with a second lifetime, I still couldn't figure him out. I grabbed my flashlight and went to find Selena. She looked stunned when I told her to take Anthony home, but she didn't argue. She just followed me back. Anthony had passed out completely. Selena struggled under his dead weight, practically dragging him away. I didn't lift a finger to help. This was her choice. She could deal with the consequences. The next morning, as I was leaving with my suitcase, Aunt Wang came rushing over. She grabbed my hand, her eyes wide with excitement. "Come on, you have to see this." She led me straight to what was supposed to have been my marital home. There, in the courtyard, was a public spectacle. Anthony, his face a mask of fury, was staring down at a disheveled Selena who was sitting on the ground, clutching at her torn clothes. It didn't take a genius to figure out what had happened. After dragging a drunken Anthony home last night, Selena had snapped. She'd been thinking about how he had chased after me. How he had come back looking shattered. How he had passed out drunk in front of my door. And how, even in his drunken sleep, he had been calling out my name. She couldn't take it. So, while he was passed out, she'd taken advantage of him. Even knowing he was probably dreaming of me, she'd slept with him anyway. Hearing the story from the gossiping villagers, I just felt disgusted. I turned to leave. But before I could, Anthony grabbed me. "Maria, please, just let me explain." This man was unbelievable. I took a deep breath. Then, looking him directly in the eye, I said calmly, "Anthony, I thought I made myself clear yesterday." He searched my eyes, desperately trying to find a flicker of the love I once had for him. Something. Anything. But he found nothing. Only a flat, empty apathy. I didn't care enough to be angry. And because I wasn't angry, none of this could touch me. And then he finally got it. I truly, completely, did not care about him anymore. His grip on my arm went slack. His voice was a low whisper. "I'm sorry." "Sorry? For what? For this life? Or for the last one?"